The Louie Anderson Podcast. Oh, yeah, baby. Let me call you sweetheart. I'm in love with you. Let me hear you whisper that you love me too.
Hello?
Hello.
Hi, buddy.
How are you, man?
I'm obviously got no sense of direction, Mike. There it is.
There it is. I think you did it.
I turned the room.
Oh, nice. That's always easier.
I used to do that. I turned the room if I was lucky.
Mm-hmm.
Mike, I'm so happy. You are been so patient, so wonderful in many ways in the last 100 days. Would it be 100, do you think? Is it 200? Is it 200 or 300?
It's closer to 300.
300 days we've known each other. And do people ask you every day, Mike, how to pronounce your name? Every day?
Yeah, my first name. Yes, they do. Since I was a little kid, I've been correcting people on it. And I think it gives you a fair amount of character to have to always correct people.
And it's Sikowitz.
That is correct.
Yeah. Mike, this is the Louie Anderson Podcast, and I talk to comics. And Mike, you were a comic. I talked to other people, but you are primarily a writer now. But you started out in the trenches like we all did.
Mm-hmm. A little bit.
And started out in?
Well, Philadelphia, where I was in college, was when I first graced the stage. And then New York, and then I did a very brief tour of colleges in the Midwest. Tried again in New York, where it was, the 1:30 in the morning, if people stayed, kind of mic time, which I'm sure you're familiar with in your day. And then eventually just sort of backed into advertising, which led to TV writing and stand-up. Stand-up seemed like it would have been a very difficult journey. I wasn't great at it, and so this other stuff came up instead.
And I mean, one thing I always say is it's like stand-up picks you.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to have a certain amount of you have to almost have a love affair with stand-up to stick with it.
Yeah.
Everything else is secondary.
Mm-hmm.
And so I always tell people, I go, you're serious about it or not? Because if you're not, just forget about it.
Yeah.
Do something, because everything else is, in one sense, is simpler. It isn't, but it is. Everything that's really great is hard to learn. But stand-up is where you get shot while you're learning it.
Yeah.
You get almost physically shot.
That's right.
Comics are so sensitive. But anyway,
I just want to say there's no substitute for doing it. Like if you want to learn to play basketball, you can go in the backyard by yourself and shoot jump shots. But in order to do stand-up, you have to do it in front of people. And so, like you said, you're always putting yourself in that position. It is sometimes really rewarding, but other times, as you say, you get shot.
Mike, now that you say that, one of the things that has occurred to me during this pandemic that we're currently in is we will all have to learn, and I'm in the process of doing it myself, how to do stand-up again without a live audience.
Mm-hmm.
And that is something I'm working on right now.
Have you been doing that? Have you been putting work out there, just recording on your own?
I did a thing with Caroline Ray for her birthday and just did some jokes I wrote. I just wrote a few jokes.
Yeah.
And then I did them, and I think you have to really rely on your sense of timing, and I think you have to get out of your head and right into your performing, like the people are there. So that's my goal is to learn how to do that and to do a special, a new special, maybe 30 minutes of stand-up on a stage with no audience. So I'm working on that, but who knows if it'll work out. But I just say stand-up has changed forever in a sense.
Yeah.
And now um, this is like a prime time for a person like you, a writer. But I would imagine that it isn't the prime time, like as your writer, you go, I got to get this stuff done. But when you have all this time, it must kind of play a trick on you.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
It does. Yeah.
Go ahead. I'm going to shut up.
Well, in one sense, it's a weird time because it's hard not to be thinking about all the other things, the news, your family, cleaning the kitchen, all these tasks that you have that you don't normally have when you're away in an office. But it took me a while to sort of get to where I could sit down and really focus on work. But now, with thinking about our project and some other things that I'm trying to do, it is a big chunk of time. Who even knows how long? But I want to have some things to show for it in the end. The worst thing I think would be to say, well, that was 4 months and I didn't do anything. So I'm pitching a show and writing another one and hoping that I can move some things forward. But you're right; it does play tricks on you because it doesn't feel like real time. Like my days now end at about 3.
Yeah.
It's not a real work day.
Yeah.
An animal just walked into my office. Sorry about that.
That's all right. Okay. What's this?
Dove, can you close the door, please? And can you call Shorty out of here? Sorry. That's Shorty.
Yeah, I mean, I don't.
Not Daddy, so.
Sorry about that.
No, it's all good. You have a life, and that's fantastic. So, Mike, now, what's your prediction? I'm just going to ask you this. You don't have to say it, but what's your prediction? You say 4 months. It's been right.
Mm-hmm.
4 months. Is it going to be 8 months? Is it going to be a year? Is it going to be 2 years?
No. And fortunately, this morning I was appointed to that committee that makes all these decisions. So what we're going to do is this. We're going to soon we're going to start opening some things. Not like the dummies had 2 paros down in Georgia. But I think we are going to open supermarkets and stuff like that. But I think things like the last, and then eventually schools, and eventually workplaces. But the last things are going to be like a Dodgers game, 40,000 people, or a Padres game, 6,000 people. That's not going to happen for a long time, I think, because that's just throwing everyone back together in a way that just seems irresponsible. I know you're a big sports fan. It's hard to imagine. That's what Garcetti said. It's hard to imagine going to a Dodger game anytime in the near future with 40,000 people.
Yeah, and when you in Georgia, do you think when they get a tattoo in Georgia, it's the peach? Is that their first thought?
A peach tattoo is considered essential business.
Yeah.
If it's just like a name, that can wait. But if you're getting that state peach, yeah,
we want to see you coming.
Exactly.
So, I think Garcetti, God, he has a long history there. At least I'm sure you know of it as his dad and the whole thing. But I think you're right. But let's talk. I'd like to talk about Mike and I have a project that we work a sitcom that we worked on together. Mike did all the hard work. I just went, what about this? What about this?
That took a lot of energy. You said it. You said it a lot, though. So you put a lot out there.
I do believe I did put a lot out there, and Mike and I really worked well together, and I love his process. Mike is what I could only hope to be in the sense of a work ethic. I mean, I'm not kidding you. Like he would say, I'm going to do a short rewrite, and then he would, like, I'd be there, I'd say, well, I'll watch an episode of Goliath. And then before it was over, he'd go, the rewrite has been sent. I go, what? The rewrite has been. Are you Hussein? What's his name? What was the runner? Bolt?
Oh, Usain Bolt.
Yeah.
I thought you were going in a sort of Saddam Hussein direction.
Oh no, I have started. Yesterday, I started Homeland. I watched it when it first came out a little bit, but I have gone to the first pilot episode because it's ending this Sunday, and I said, everybody asked me if I've seen Homeland, and now I can say I have. And it is quite a well done show. I love all the actors, and you can't go wrong when Mandy Patinkin is in your show.
No.
But anyway, so Mike and I are doing this writing process. I just want to talk, Mike. Every comic wants to be a better writer. I just want you to know that. So you really you started out as a comic. The writing must have grabbed you. When did it grab you? What's that one thing?
I'm sure.
What were you able to do that you thought, oh, I'm good at this?
I'm sure the decision to become a writer happened on stage one night. It's interesting. I don't. I'll tell you what it was. I was a big fan of. If you ask me the show that was most influential for me, I would say Cheers. Right? I used to watch it all the time. I used to watch The Honeymooners all the time. And I got a job in advertising where I would, our main account was ABC primetime television. I lived in New York, and ABC at the time would FedEx the scripts for the next couple of weeks of Roseanne. There was a show with Jackie Mason called Chicken Soup at the time. They would FedEx these scripts to our agency, and the copywriters would read the scripts and then write little blurbs that would go in TV Guide, or People Magazine, or your local newspaper. And when I started to read the scripts, eventually I started to feel like whoever's writing these scripts is probably having more fun than just the people writing the little taglines about the scripts. And it was reading these TV scripts over and over that made me think, this would probably be fun to do. And so that's when I sort of segued into trying to make a study of how to do them. And
excuse me.
Sure.
And how did you make that transition from writing those blurbs into the next phase of the writing?
So I grabbed a buddy of mine who was very funny. He was also trying to be a stand-up. And I told him my theory about how this looks like a viable job in comedy, writing these TV scripts. And we came up with an idea for, I think the first thing we wrote was original pilot. We came up with an idea for a pilot, and we just looked at the scripts and the way they were structured and sort of went to school on them. Came up with a story, wrote a couple of pilots, and then back then.
Do you remember the first idea you came up with?
Yes. We were just a year or two out of college, so we were still very charmed by our college experience and all our buddies and the knuckleheads that we went to school with and the girls that we chased. And so it was about that. It was a college group of friends in college and their experiences. And that's what we wrote.
You didn't call it Knuckleheads, did you?
No, it would have been a good title. And then eventually someone gave us the advice that you should probably write an existing show so that people know how to gauge it against, they know the characters and they know if you've hit the mark or not. And so we wrote a Cheers episode. And then that's how it started. We ended up getting them read by some people and eventually moving to LA and fortunately finding work.
And you worked, you continued to work with that person a little bit?
Oh, for 15 years or so. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. It was
And
fun.
working with somebody is completely different than working alone.
Yes, very much so. I mean, it's, TV is 95 95% dialogue. So we would talk it out. We would, alternate lines and say it and see if it sounded funny. That's harder to do when it's just you.
Yeah.
Um,
Now, who is that person now? Your family
um,
that you're talking to?
no,
Your assistant or people that are you're
no.
writing the script for? Or
The closest thing I have to that is my wife Bonnie, who's a great writer, and who I will show I'll pitch her ideas. I'll show her every script. I won't pitch a show to her. I don't like pitching, the process of pitching, especially to her. I'm too self-conscious. But she'll read everything. But as far as the dialogue, no, I just have to kind of sit here or I'll walk around. I close the office door and they hear me talking and they know that I'm writing because I'll be both characters and I'll speak the line to hear it. But it's not the same as doing it back and forth.
you know what? One of the hardest things I think is somebody who's a comic just sent me his first sitcom script.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was concerned with the format being right and all that kind of stuff. He did a pretty good job. I haven't read it yet, but do you remember when you sold your first script?
Well,
or did they buy a script you wrote already?
No. What happens more commonly for TV writers is they get hired. It's not like a feature where it's like, oh, we like this movie and we'll buy it. I mean, eventually I've sold pilots that some have turned into series, but in the early days when you're just starting, like your friend who wants to be a TV writer, in success, someone would read his script and think that he's got something enough to give him a shot to write on a show.
How many pilots do you think you've written in your life? Ballpark.
24.
That were bought, or 24 in general?
No. Oh, no.
That's
no, actually, okay, I would say about 15 that were bought and another 15 ballpark that were not, that were on spec or that weren't bought. Something like that.
What was the first show you worked on then? What'd you get hired for?
I was telling Mike, the lovely gentleman who set this up, that it was a show called Hanging with Mr. Cooper with the comedian Mark Curry.
Oh. Yeah, Mark Curry, great comic, by the way.
Yeah, he's very funny man.
Very charming, super charming human being.
Yeah, and the show had him as a substitute teacher, an aspiring teacher. So he was charming, and they put him around kids, which I think makes anyone even more charming. So yeah, that was it.
Yeah, and that went for a while, Mr. Cooper.
It went for a while. I did not go for a while on it. After the first year, my partner and I decided to test the waters of what else was out there. But
do you sometimes when you're on a show, do you either fit or you don't fit?
Yes, for sure. I mean, look, it's a very collaborative process. You've got 10, 12 other writers around a table for 80% of the time. So I early on, and again, I'm not throwing myself a parade, but I do tend to get along with most people, even people that aren't my favorites. Sure.
I'm that person. Yeah, I'm happy you get along.
Well, I can't imagine it would be difficult to get along with you, but so I early on I realized that that's sort of the secret to longevity. is not to rub people the wrong way, to try to really understand that it's a collaborative job. It's a real team effort. But there are those people who come in and just aren't a good fit. Their sensibility is not right, or they're not great with other people. There are certain showrunners that I won't name who I'm very glad that they're showrunners, because if they had to go back in a room and work for other people, I don't think they could do it. You know, there's a lot of just like with stand-ups, there's a lot of peculiar personalities in TV writing. You know.
Yeah, and you have to be able to fit in the room. You know.
Yeah.
Like if you can't show up the showrunner and all that stuff. Now, how many shows were you the showrunner on?
I would say about 6 or 8, something like that. Yeah. Definitely not. I've eliminated 7. It's either 6 or 8.
Okay. So, Mike, were you happiest being the showrunner?
Yeah. Yeah.
Always? Yeah.
Well, I mean,
say that your personality and your work ethic and all those things lend themselves for you being the showrunner. Am I right?
Well, yes. I mean, and also I've been doing it for a long time. I mean, there are certain shows that I was lower on the totem pole, and I enjoyed them very much. Like I enjoyed the experience of it, and also at that time, like Friends is a show that it was a very wonderful time, you know, to be a part of that show.
Was it complete fun? Was it a purely fun show?
No, it was hard work too, but it was a sort of fun time of life, your mid-20s and working on a hit show. But to your question, like at this point, I always think of being a showrunner as like you're in like a walk and talk in a movie, and people are coming up to you saying, which outfit do you like for this star? You go, that one. And they're like, which song do you like for this part? You go, that one. And which joke do you like? That one. And you're making all these. It's basically a series of making decisions. And to me, it's very
almost troubleshooting, right?
Troubleshooting, yeah, but seeing everything through, from casting to the beginning of an idea for an episode, all the way through the final sound mix once it's shot. And I love how no 2 days are alike. You know, one day you're in editing, one day you're in the room, one day you're in casting, one day you're home writing a script. I just like the energy that within this one job, there's really, 20 jobs that you have to do. And I like working with a lot of people. I like it when the guy comes in who's designed the models of the sets, and he takes you through, and he's all excited to show you where the camera ports are and how, and the prop guy comes and has designed a blender that will fall apart or something, and he's all excited about that. And you get to have these conversations about, like, can the explosion...
I'm sorry, Mike.
Sure.
Is that amazing? I took one sip of water.
I'm telling you, they say water is bad for you now.
Just hold on, so I want to clear this before we...
Yep.
I love those things you were just talking about. They're delightful.
Mm-hmm.
I love what you're trying to say. So we'll pick it up. What you want to pick it up with? You love when the blender guy comes in and shows you that the prop guy.
Yeah, and then you end up having a long discussion about what would be a funnier way for a blender to explode. Is it funnier if it explodes up or if it goes out? Like, and then you go.
Prop person?
That would be the prop person, or sometimes the effects person. If it's for some reason I'm pitching that a blender explodes. I don't know what the show is. I don't know why the blender exploded. It doesn't sound like a very good show, but
the juicer.
There you see, these are the discussions that you would want to have, and that's what this job does. And so if you're and if you have a sense of how it's done, running a show, then it's easier to do it than to sit back and watch someone else do it. And then you're going, oh, I wouldn't have done it that way. I'd rather be the.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I'm just saying. I'd rather be the person making the decisions, just because I think it's fun to make all those decisions. Oh, and then
So
the little.
you're a mob boss. You're a TV mob boss.
I've often been described that way.
I know, because you are the final. Am I right? Besides the network people, right?
Yeah, yeah.
You're the final.
Yeah, when you're running
the show, you're not doing it that way.
No, you're the one who has to make those decisions.
So I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
How about when someone goes against you on that, goes behind your back? Because that must happen.
Like another writer on the show,
I don't know, like this, where somebody tries to undermine you in those situations. Does that ever happen, or do you just doesn't it happen? Am I just thinking it does happen? Because I know myself how passive aggressive I am, and that I might say to Cindy in in the office, what do you think about Mike? Do you think he's a tyrant, or is it just me?
Well, I have been fortunate enough to, and I think it has to do with the climate of the show. So it's all about making decisions, right? But it's also about realizing that you're probably making 50% of the wrong ones, and then you're going to have to go back and make them again. But if you do it in an open way, where you put your ego aside and you really are open to other people's ideas, then I don't think it would happen where people would go behind your back, because they would know that they could, in a functional environment, they could come to you and say, hey, I know that you wanted the ending to be like A, but what if we had it like B, And you think about it, and maybe that's better. Well, even in our little process so far, it's like you get these notes and sometimes you disagree, but sometimes you go, no, I think there might be something to that. And so I haven't had a problem with people going around me, or, because.
Well, that's good.
Yeah. Because
I'm just curious if
mm-hmm.
sometimes you're put in that position. And so when that happens, when do you know a show's over? Like when you're making it, when do you go, oh, this is, or do you never feel that way? You're working on a show. Do you ever feel like, oh, I think this could be our last season?
Oh yeah, I have felt that. And then often when you feel that, you get a call confirming that feeling from the network. Sometimes it's just too much. It's just too hard. Like okay, Friends is a good example of a difficult process that you knew was working. Right? You would work till 4 or 5 in the morning, but then you would see the episodes and you go, okay, this really all came together. But I've been on some shows where it's just like, it shouldn't be this hard. You shouldn't have to rewrite all the time. Obviously, something's not right, whether it's you're not connecting with the cast on what they can do, or you don't have the right people, or you see a different show than what the network or studio sees. The notes are just colossal every week. At a certain point, it's just like, this isn't gonna sustain. It just can't. I have had that sinking feeling sometimes, and you do your best to try to figure it out. And there's a lot of meetings. Shows like that tend to have a lot of meetings and conference calls. We're all going to get on the phone and talk about it. And sometimes you can figure it out, but other times it's like, hey, you guys, just don't think this is quite working. You're almost never shocked when that happens.
Yeah. Hey, Mike, how many hours do you work a day on writing when you're writing? Like, are you a guy who goes in every day and writes for 8 hours at least, or is in his office for 8 hours?
No, I would say to me 4 is a good number, because it's and again, like when I say it's hard work, like there are guys outside on the street putting in like a sewer thing, like that's hard work. Like it's not hard work like that, but it is mentally tiring. And after a certain point, I feel like unless you have to, unless it's like we're shooting tomorrow, we got to get this rewrite done. In which case, that could take 12 hours, and you do it, you get it done. If I don't have to, I'd rather take 4 good hours, work productively, take a break, step away from it, forget about it, go play with the kids or whatever, and then come back to it tomorrow fresh,
Mike, if you have to say one thing to writers out there who want to be writers, or comics who want to be writers, or the guy digging in the street that wants to become a writer, how does he become a writer? How do you become a writer? Like, let's just say you were doing what you were doing, knocking around in something else, still writing, but not writing what you wanted to write.
Right.
So what would you give them advice? Like, they just moved to Hollywood. They were a big shot in Minnesota, and they said, I think I want to be a TV writer and write the next Cheers. What would you say to them?
I would give 2 pieces of advice. Number one is, it seems very obvious, but start writing. Start writing. Because it really is something you learn by doing. And, a friend of my father's gave me this advice once. I didn't know what I wanted to do after college. This guy, it's a quick story, but this guy was an immigrant from Italy who came over with like a 6th grade education. He never owned a tie, but he bought some property really cheap with money he'd scraped together in an industrial park on Long Island. Put up a warehouse, soon was leasing it for a lot of money, built another one, and became like a commercial real estate warehouse guy, made a fortune. And then he was in all kinds of real estate, residential and building. So I said, I don't know what I want to do. And he said, build a house. Build a house? He said, yeah, someone always needs a house. Build a house. I said, I don't know anything about building a house. And he goes, you will on the second house. And I thought that was so interesting, right? Like you'll learn so much just from doing it. Even if you know nothing, you'll figure it out.
What a great story.
And so to me, it's like write a script. And you might know nothing about writing a script, but I guarantee you that the second time you do it, you'll know more from having done it the first and the third and the fourth. And so I would say you got to write every day. And no matter what, even if you have to make a living and pay your rent, protect your time to write. Because if you come out to Hollywood and if you're working 12 hours in some job and then you just flop down and go to sleep and you have no time to write, then you're not helping yourself become a writer. You have to do it every day. And whatever job you have should protect your writing time and your writing space, and you need to find a place you like to do it and a space you like to do it and some quiet and find your methods. And then the second thing is to watch everything that you can. Become a compulsive viewer of all shows, all movies, things that you normally wouldn't be interested in. If you're not a sci-fi person, watch sci-fi just to see what it is and what the references are and how it's put together. Watch bad shows. You can learn as much from bad shows as you can from good ones. What didn't you like about them? Start tracking the story. Do you know where this story is going, or did it turn in a way you didn't expect? When did you find yourself interested? When did you not find yourself interested? What made you laugh in that show? Why did it make you laugh? And to me, especially now where all this stuff is available on streaming and on the computer, that's your grad school right there. Just every day, watch something. Watch dozens of episodes until you really can understand how they're put together and what the rhythm is to them. Why didn't you like the way that person delivered a joke? What do you think would have made that moment funnier? What was so good about that moment in an episode of Veep or Taxi or whatever? What has you still thinking about that hours after you've watched it? And so the combination of doing it and letting all this stuff in And going to school on it is, to me, that would be the advice. And it always works. Everyone who I've given that advice to no, it doesn't always work, but it's a hard.
Well, it always works for the people who do it.
That's right. That's right.
1,000%. That's my guess.
Well, I'm sure you've given similar advice to comedians.
I have, and all the ones, everybody who follows the advice comes back and goes, "What did you mean by that? What did you mean by that?"
Mm-hmm.
And who follows up, because when you give advice, you're giving advice because you're going to they're going to call you. They're going to call you because they're not going to understand at the beginning what you're saying necessarily. So they're going to come back. But so I'm happy to say that I feel like I give not too much advice, but enough.
Mm-hmm.
So for comics, Mike, we go from, as you know, open stages, you get a little act, you find a club that'll let you work a little more, you become the doorman if that's what you need to do, you become the MC, you become this and this and this until you get on the regular list, club-wise. That's club-wise.
Sure.
So as a writer, you get the job in the room, or you get the job working for the guy who runs the room, or whatever, right? You get yourself in the proximity of the room.
Yeah.
Where something's being created. Mm-hmm. Correct?
Yes, and that's what you want is to be around it. To be,
So let's say I've written a bunch of stuff. I can't get a job at Mike's Big Shot show, and I'm trying like hell because he's doing, Knuckleheads 3, the third installment of Knuckleheads.
Sure.
The Knuckleheads we had have all died off. He's got new Knuckleheads.
Right.
And I want to get in there, and I keep coming up to a brick wall. I should abandon trying to get into Mike's place, and I should find another thing. So I should have several outlets I'm trying to get into. Am I right?
Sure.
And so that writer that gets a job with you or something, I know you're a helpful person and you've helped people along the way. So, but I also know you're not going to help somebody who's not ready to be helped. Am I right?
Yeah.
And so do you measure them by their work ethic, their ability? Do you measure them by all those things? Or do you just, if they're a great writer, you figure out how to help them with those other things?
In my experience, the great writers have also been the ones with the good work ethics and the ones who are open to criticism. I've had experiences where, and also I believe that you sort of have an obligation to help people in the way that people helped you. I know you feel that way. I know people were very helpful to you when you were starting out. And so to me, it's why you take those jobs as a PA or a writer's assistant or a night PA, so that you can be around people who will eventually read your scripts or give you advice. So I always want to do that. These people are so helpful. They bring you lunch every day. It's no fun to drive to Chipotle and get 12 burritos and they stink up your car. But to me, that's why they do it. And that's why they should be doing it, is they're making connections, right? I've had a PA come to me and say, "Hey, I wrote a script. Do you mind taking a look at it?" And I said, "Sure, I'd be happy to." I read the guy's script. It wasn't very good. I said, I can give you some notes if you'd like. He's like, "Oh, yeah, okay." We arranged to meet and have coffee. And when I got there, I noticed he didn't have a copy of the script and he didn't have a pen. So I said, "Oh, do you want to get an extra pen? Do you want to write some of these things down?" And he goes, "Nah, I'm good."
Hi, Bonnie.
Bonnie, Louie said hello. She can't hear you because I got headphones on.
So when you got there.
Okay. So when I got there, I realized that he didn't have a pen. And I said, do you want to write down these notes? Not that they're the holy grail of notes, but you may want to I've got a couple of dozen notes for you. You may want to. He's like, no, I'm good. And I realized he didn't want notes. What he wanted was me to tell him it was good and to try to help him get a job. And so in my mind, I said, well, I'm not going to tell him it was really good if it wasn't. And I'm not going to help him get a job because he's not willing to pay the dues, you know? And so to me, it's sort of self-selecting. There are those people who it's like, that woman, she just has it. She's asking the right questions. She's persistent. She's asked if she could sit in the room and sort of get a feel for how that goes. She was eager to hear notes about her script, and the scripts were good. I mean, so yes, you're looking for that whole package of some, because I've also dealt with some people who have all the right work ethic and the tools, but they just don't quite have it on the page. And some of it's to the point where it's like, I don't see this person ever getting it. It's just so far from the target. And those are hard cases.
Yeah, that's rough always. But
yeah.
So, Mike, are women more open to getting notes or are men?
I don't think I would say. No, I don't.
I only 50-50?
I think it's case specific, not gender specific. I just think it's how you're wired. You know.
Yeah.
That one.
So what's the best way to be wired in those situations? Like,
well, you know, I'll tell you this, because I had to learn it. Like, coming out to LA, my partner and I got some real good feedback on some of our scripts, and we kind of thought that we were the shit. And so there was a guy who worked on Murphy Brown, who we got connected with, and I sent him one of our scripts, and he said, well, you know, we're not hiring right now, but I can give you some notes if you want. And I said, yeah, okay. But in my mind, I was like, I don't want notes. I want a job. So I know that mentality. But to me, you can tell the people who really want to learn from the people who just feel entitled to success, and they want to shortcut it.
Did you make the notes? Did you sit down with them?
No, I didn't. I had to learn the hard way that they were.
Learned it.
Yeah.
You realized what you had done, right? So
instead, did you ever hear this is an old joke. Do you have time for a quick old joke?
I'm an old guy. Yeah, this old comic has time for an old joke for sure.
So I don't know if this really applies to this situation, but a guy is on a river rafting trip. His raft goes faster and faster. It goes over a giant waterfall. He couldn't get out of it. He falls over the waterfall. It's 1,000 feet plunge. He reaches up and there's a branch sticking out, and he grabs it, and it's the only thing that's separating him from the ground below and the rocks and a sure rocky death. And he's not a religious man necessarily, but he looks up and he goes, oh my God, I'm going to die. Is there anyone up there? And from the heavens, he hears a voice that says, I am up here. Let go of the branch and you will be saved. And he goes, anybody else? And so I tell you that story because when this guy said, well, I've got notes for you, I'm sure outwardly I said, sure. I mean, I'm a polite person, so I wasn't a dick. Like, I didn't say no thanks. But in my mind, I kind of felt that way. And my partner and I think fed each other's ego. Like, so what I really thought while I was taking this guy's notes was, let's just find somebody else. This guy wasn't the right guy to send our scripts to. Let's find someone else who's going to just like them and pass them along. You know what I mean?
But yeah, you remember that. You remember that you were like that.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Then you're constantly evaluating yourself. Am I right, Mike?
Always. And so, it's a business that people feel. A lot of people have made this business look easy, right? The guy comes out to Hollywood, he's got a job. Now he's suddenly got a house with a pool, and they feel entitled to it. They go, I wrote 2 spec scripts. Where's my job? And what I want to say is, you got to write 12. You got to write 20. You've got to keep, your job is to write spec scripts until someone starts paying you. You don't write 2 and then just sit back and wait for the phone to ring. You get to work on the 3rd.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. So, so Mike and I met. It's almost. Is it a year ago, Mike? Is it
about a year? About a year.
My agency ICM. I said I want. Can you? Well, actually, my management, Brillstein Partners, said I want you to meet some writers, and I met some writers, and then I met I think 1 or 2 writers before you, and then I met you, and then I don't know if it was just the circumstances or whatever, but we kind of, you are polite, you are nice, and so that's the big thing to a insecure comic who's not necessarily writer centric.
Mm-hmm.
And so we talked and did ideas, and then I told Mike I'd like to. I told you several different ideas, but one, the one that interested you was me as a talking cat,
Mm-hmm.
Tigsley. And so
Right.
then I said, and then it all worked out to where we ended up deciding to work together. And I thought, oh, this could be a nightmare, just because working with somebody is always harder than not working with somebody. But I'm polite too. I want it to go well. I also know the value of a great writer, and you seem, and your track record. If anyone wants to look up Mike Sikowitz, Sikowitz.
Mm-hmm.
Did I get it right?
You did.
Look him up. He's done a lot of great stuff. So, and then to work that long, I know about working a long time. I'm 42 years into it.
Mm-hmm.
So I've done a lot of, in the 80s and 90s, I did pilots and I did scripts.
Yeah.
And then I got a part of the lifetime in Christine Baskets. But then, man, we hooked up, we just clicked. We clicked without clicking. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden, Sony showed interest in it, and we started working on it, and it's a great experience, and we're still right deep in it, so we can't talk too much about the specifics. But Mike and I, hopefully, will be working together, and he'll be running the room, I'm sure, and we'll find out, what that's all going to be like. So I'm looking forward to that. But when you meet, like, you must have had to do this with more than one person. They go, we want you to work with this star or this supposed star to write a thing. Or you said, what if we do a show with whoever you have done that with? They're always about the journey. And so when I talk to comics, I go, enjoy this journey. You can never have it back.
Yeah.
You can't have it back, no matter what. You
That's
think
right.
you'll be able to be a different person, but you won't.
No.
I mean, you think you'll be able to be the same person, but you won't. You'll be a different person. It's just how it is. Because now you've got some accolades where people will laugh and give you credit before you've earned that credit.
That's right.
And so, but I have to say, we are a couple of warriors, battle-tested veteran warriors, where we're hoping this show is going to end up on network.
That's right.
And we are still hanging in there. We're doing what people ask, because in comics, it's hard to. There's a guy in the Tonight Show used to tell me what jokes I could do and what jokes I couldn't do, and I didn't like it. I did not like it.
Right.
But that was his job. And so I would bring no jokes that I didn't think he wouldn't like. But he always found jokes he didn't like, because it was his job, is to let me know all my jokes weren't good.
Wait, how much time did you have between meeting with that producer and then performing?
Well, I would perform and he would come and see it, and then he'd go, let's get together and talk about your set.
Okay.
So it was that kind of thing.
Okay.
And it was a real rocky road for me at times. But to get back at him, I don't know where I went with this, but I was talking. I'm putting it. I hope I can make this make sense. I would always do a brand new joke that he didn't know about right on the Tonight Show.
Mm-hmm.
That he would be furious about afterwards, and that he'd say, "You did a joke I didn't even know about." Oh, it worked though, right? Yeah, but don't ever do that again. And then I would do it again. I would do it every time. And he never, what could he do? Because the joke always worked. But so when you write a script that we give it to people and they look at it and they have notes for you, Mike, you and I have looked forward to that. We like getting the notes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, nobody likes getting notes, but if anybody's going to like getting notes, it's me and Mike. Am I right?
We like getting the feedback because if you're close to the target, then along with the notes comes a lot of good feedback. We did love this. We thought this was hilarious. We really can't wait to see this. So, and it's also outside of each other when you put it out in the world, and it's how you're not completely crazy. You haven't handed in something that's indecipherable, that you haven't lost touch with reality. Like you're on the right track still. So that's what I like.
When I got the finished script, I never read a script that was better. And I'm not saying that to praise you. It's the truth.
It's very kind.
It's really a great script. And so, yes, we just thought they would film it. But, it's a process. There's something always good about a process. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, had they decided to do it right away, we would be in the same boat that everybody's in right now.
Yeah, we'd be shut down.
It would be shut down.
Fully shut down.
So we really, like everything happens for a reason, and I believe in that stuff.
I think we're actually in a better position because I think they're going to lose momentum or enthusiasm for some of the projects that they were in the middle of, or they might lose actors, directors. I
think what else you lose is now this pandemic has changed the landscape.
Yeah.
The landscape is different. So, anyways, I'm excited. I loved working with you. I loved the whole process. You're just so easy to work with. I mean, the only thing about writers, any good writer, any good comic, any great anything, is almost always at the underside of themselves, an immovable object. We will put on a face of movability. We will act like we will change. We will do all these things. But I think we got where we were by being an immovable product to begin with. I think we knew what we wanted. We knew where we were going, and we were going to get there. And I think we got there. You and I got there. Regardless of this particular sitcom, we got there. But we both feel this is a great idea. But what I was getting at was this. I think you have to keep that part of yourself that believes, but I think you have to be open. And it took me a long time to learn this. I have to be more willing to listen. I was not a good listener. I go, you don't know what you're talking about. I can do anything.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry for that. I missed out on a lot of opportunities for being so bullheaded. And
you had a quick
open to a lot of things and changing things. But I think Mike and I came to the conclusion we're not open to everything.
No, you can't be.
We wrote a great script, and we want you to make it. And if we have to change what we wrote, it won't be a great script to us.
Well, I mean, I'm somewhere in the middle where because you had very quick success when you started stand up, didn't you? You hit the Tonight Show pretty quickly.
Yeah, I mean, when I got the Tonight Show in '84,
Yeah.
That's like being blasted off into outer space.
Right. And I think that messes with your head a little bit because it's such a strong validation. In 1984, being on Carson was the pinnacle. That was the pinnacle of all working comics. And then you also had, I think, HBO specials that I saw back in the day, right?
Yeah.
And so
but it was so, I was just so, but I wish I would have been smarter about it all. But that's another story. But
right. But whereas
I
yeah,
had a tremendous amount of success.
Right, and I think like that for me, I had modest success at the beginning, but I knew that part of it was being open and malleable. And growing up, I think as a writer versus a stand-up, I think is very different because you're immediately part of a team when you're a writer. I think a stand-up, you're a little bit more of a lone wolf, writing your own stuff, and so. That's for anyone who didn't quite understand wolf. But I don't think that to me, my bread and butter has more been sort of trying to figure out how to collaborate and take from other people what's helpful and leave behind what's not. Versus the ironclad, there are some showrunners who write every word of a great show and don't want to hear from anyone else, and they're brilliant, and this show is brilliant. But I'm not wired that way. It's hard for me to just sort of shut down other influences, When someone has a note,
well, I think that's probably what worked so well.
Yeah.
Because I think I became more open, especially when I saw your openness.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I think you knew I was a loose cannon to begin with.
Sure.
But in a nice way.
Well,
very nice
in the most delightful way. I mean, you're a guy who has tons of ideas. I think you felt in our process very unself-conscious, just that you could just throw them out there, and that I think it took you a little while to get used to like. I often will just sit and listen, and sometimes I think people take that as like, "Oh, he didn't like that." And I go, "No, I'm just thinking about it." But or sometimes I need to walk away and really think about it. There's two sides of a TV writer. One, you want to be quick in the room because it's the ball's moving quickly, but then also I think you want to be able to just have the quiet to just think about it. Like I'll come in in the morning on a show and be like, hey, remember that thing that so and so pitched like middle of the afternoon yesterday? We all just sort of went past it, but I was thinking about that last night, and I actually think there's a way to do that, and I think it could be better. So I think it's like two sides of a brain. Everyone wants to be quick, but you also need to be able to.
I would say to you right there, that's the essence of your success. Is you go, wait a minute, I am open to this being completely different.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that will ultimately, hopefully, cause us to be able to work on this particular project, or just move on to another project, hopefully together. But whatever happens, I mean, we're not in control of any of this next stuff. And can you talk a minute about being helpless and not in control of stuff when the network or you're waiting on someone? Can you talk just a minute about that? Like, what do you do when there's absolutely, are you as crazy as I am where I want to keep calling people and trying to find out stuff? Or, let's just say we're still waiting. That's what I'll say. What do you do when you're waiting?
It's the worst part of the job, where I think that you have to distract yourself with other things, other projects, other non-projects, take a drive. Our kids are a good distraction because they've always got stuff going on. But it's the worst because, as you said, when you're sitting in front of the screen writing, you have all the control, all of it. And then you hand in the script and suddenly you go from 60 to 0. You have none of it. There's nothing you can do at that point. It's in, and so you don't know if and then you start going, oh, it's Tuesday, I haven't heard anything. Well, maybe they were out of town for the weekend. Maybe that's why, or maybe they didn't like it, because if they liked it, they would have called. It's like dating, right? It's like you can make yourself crazy. And so to me, it's just like I've been through it enough to have a sense of what's going to happen. Like, just like every other time, I'm sure they liked it. I'm sure they have some thoughts and concerns. We'll talk about it. We'll go to the next part of the process. But yeah, it's terrible because we all want to have control. It's like you want to have control of the jokes you write, and then suddenly you've sent them off into the world. And
Yep. So, Mike.
Yep.
You really never know who's going to go yes and who's going to go no.
Mm-hmm.
All right?
You're right.
You think you'll know people. You'll try to get info from people. Well, what they sound like when you were talking to them?
Yeah.
They sound after, that crazy stuff that we all do. That, that I'm a really sensitive human being. Comes from a large family where there's lots of I needed a lot of reassurance in a lot of ways. But I've really gotten to a point where I have to let go of things on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
I have to keep relearning stuff that I already know. I have to keep doing. I have to keep. Why do I keep forgetting what I already know? That's what I say to myself.
It's one of your book titles.
What?
Yeah. It's kind of one of your book titles. Or lessons I keep forgetting to learn.
Yeah, lessons I keep forgetting to learn.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm expecting that you'll have that finished by Monday. Because,
end of day Monday.
Come in and throw out 20 ideas and get 5 books out of it. That's how I think. Oh, isn't that enough stuff? For God's sakes, I have to write it up. Hey, I just wanted to ask you, what things... First of all, thank you for doing the podcast.
It's a pleasure. Nice to talk to you.
Yeah, it's fun. Tell me, is there anything else you want to mention about writing or writers or the process?
I would just say this. It's you and I have talked about this. We're very lucky people because it's a gift to be able to make a living in something that you love so much and that's so suited to you. Being in a writer's room, I mean, you've been in them and you'll see in success of our show, knock on wood, it's the greatest place to be, surrounded by clever, funny, witty, quick people. The room bits are often as fun as the actual show. And we're just so lucky to go to work every day and do this for a living. And I would just encourage you to, if you're a young, or just a starting out writer, to hang in there because it is so worth it. If you can get to that place where you're a writer every day, a writer of comedy, and it's a gift. And once you're doing it, to remember that too. No matter what happens, you get frustrating notes, or actor is sick and you have to shut down production, or people are annoying, or there's a deadline, or stuff going on at home that's distracting you. Every day in a writer's room is a gift. And always just take a step back and realize just how lucky you are to have this job versus any other, and I've done it for a long time. I hope to keep doing it for a long time because there's nothing like it. It's really worth pursuing.
Mike, thank you so much. Mike Sikowitz.
Thank you, Louie.
I love that your family would come in once in a while. That just goes to show you how comfortable they are with bothering you. I love that.
Yes, absolutely.
And how much of a really family man you are. And
wow.
It's great when you're a writer or a comic and you have another life.
Wow.
I encourage people to get that other life if they can.
Yeah,
and I'm going to get one, I promise you, as soon as I become really successful. No, I'm very happy. But thanks again for doing this.
My pleasure.
Keep your fingers crossed for Tigsley.
Yes.
All right.
We'll talk soon. Be well, everyone. Okay.
Right. Take care. Okay. Thanks, Mike.
Anytime, Louie. Stay safe.
You too.
Bye.